What's going on, guys? Today's Friday the 13th, which means it's very possible that something unlucky is going to happen to you today. But before you get too worried, I'm going to share with you a story right now that could change your whole perspective on that. And it may just be that whatever happens to you today could be one of the most important, life-changing moments of your entire life. Are you ready? Let's get into it. My name is Michael Dennis, and I make videos about confidence, productivity, and happiness so you can get shit done and love every step of the way. If that sounds like something that you're interested in, I make videos about that stuff 2 times a week, so hit that subscribe button and the little bell so you always get notified. Now, the story that I'm going to tell you, it's called the Taoist Farmer. And I don't know if it's an old Chinese parable, but Alan Watts also talked about it, but it's just a popular story. I'm not really sure where it originated, but it goes something like this. So there's this Chinese farmer, he has a horse, and one day his horse runs away. All his neighbors come over and they're like, "Yo, bro, what? Your horse ran away, that's so unlucky, I feel so bad for you." And he's like, maybe. And they're all like, "What, maybe? What is he talking about?" And then the next day rolls around and the horse actually comes back, and it doesn't just come back, it comes back with like 3 more other horses, wild horses that it just made friends with, I guess, and happened to come back home with. And so all the neighbors are like, "Oh my God, now you're so lucky, you're so rich, you have like 4 horses, all of us only have 1 or maybe no horses at all." And he says, "Maybe." And then the next day, since these are wild horses, they still need to be trained or broken in. And so the son is training one of the horses. But in a little accident, the horse bucks and it breaks the son's leg. So all his neighbors come over and they're like, "Oh my God, you are so unlucky, we're so sorry for you, this is so unfortunate." He says, "Maybe." Then the next day, something unthinkable happens. The army officers come into town and look for all the able-bodied young men to go into war. And of course, they don't choose the farmer's son because his leg is broken. So everyone says, "Oh my God, you're so lucky." And he responds with, "Maybe." And yes, the story ends there. I would have loved an ending like, "Ha, told you so, bitch." But sorry, we're not gonna get that ending because that would defeat the whole purpose of the story, which is that no matter how good or how bad an event may seem now, you never know what that event will lead to and what will ultimately be good or bad. So you can't judge events, you can't label them as being a good thing or a bad thing because you just never know. In other words, no matter how obvious it may seem that something is good or something is bad that happens to us right now, in the grand scheme of things, in the long run, we really have no idea how things are going to play out, and it could turn out that the best thing to have happened to us one day turns out to be the worst thing that's ever happened to us a year down the road, or vice versa. So we have to remember that everything that happens to us in our lives is simply neutral, and only time will tell whether it's good or bad. And actually, if you really think about it, it would never be good or bad unless you set a specific endpoint. Because, for example, winning the lottery, if you set the endpoint to right now, would be amazing. It's like, "Oh my God, I just won the lottery, I have so much more money." And then maybe, let's say, 3 months down the road, it's still a good thing because you still have a lot of money. But then let's say 3 years down the road, you've developed a habit of spending way too much money and you've ended up using all of the money, and now you're bankrupt and you're used to a lavish lifestyle that you can no longer support. At that point, it's a bad thing. So once you can accept the fact that everything that happens to us is neutral, it's not necessarily good nor bad, you'll be so much less worried, you'll have so much less anxiety, and you'll experience so much more peace. Because pretty much all problems come from resistance. And by judging whatever happens, by labeling it as good or bad, you're kind of resisting it in a way, instead of just letting it be. So to make this a little more concrete, here are a few examples. One, probably the biggest one that you hear about all the time, are breakups. Someone will think that the breakup at the time is just the worst thing that ever happened to them. They're just so devastated and depressed. And then a matter of months or years go by and they look back on it and realize that, wow, that might have actually been the best thing that ever happened to me because now I have so much more freedom, so much more time, so much more whatever the case may be. Or for example, you could have a pretty good job that you're really happy with, getting paid a good amount, and then you suddenly get laid off. Of course, at the time that's going to seem absolutely devastating, but it may turn out that you end up finding a better job, one that you like even more and that pays you even more. So then at that point, this would be considered a good thing. Even a near-death experience, which is probably one of the most traumatic, scary, horrible things that could ever happen to you, could turn out to be one of the best things that ever happened to you, because I've heard countless stories of people who have become very successful and they attribute it to like some near-death experience, something that just absolutely changed the way that they see the world. And without that having happened to them, they might not have gone on to do such great things. Now, you may argue that some of these possible outcomes are a little far-fetched, and yes, they might be. Like, for example, the son breaking his leg and then the next day the army officers come around trying to recruit him and they can't because his leg is broken. Yes, while that one scenario is unlikely, the truth is that's not the only scenario that could happen. There are tons of good and bad scenarios that could happen from him breaking his leg. For example, another good one could be that maybe he was a little riskier before that and was prone to hurting himself, but now after that, he's gonna be a lot more risk averse, a lot more cautious. And so at this point, you can consider that a good thing, because now maybe he'll live longer because he's not gonna be as reckless. Again, the whole point is, who knows? Nobody knows. You don't know, I don't know, no one knows. So the whole point is, don't worry too much about what might happen in the future or whether you made the right decision or not in the past, because you can never know. Just go with the flow and accept the fact that everything that happens to you is neutral, because it could seem bad now and it could be so good later, or the opposite. You never know. And this is especially helpful right after you've made a big life decision. Like if you were between two colleges, for example, you're applying to colleges and you're between the two, you choose one, and then you start to wonder, did I make the right choice? The truth is, you'll never know. First of all, there is no right choice. There are only two different options. And secondly, you'll never know what would have happened if you went there, so don't worry about it. It could have been the best thing that happened to you, it could have been the worst thing, but you'll never know, so just accept what is. Accept the fact that you're in this college. And that brings us to the end of the video, so if you liked it, be sure to give it a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, do what you gotta do, and check out this video if you're into this topic, because this one's very similar. This is about the ways that we respond to different events in our lives and how that affects our outcomes. So with that being said, I will see you in the next video. Peace.